This is Chozum TV, that is Solution TV in English for May 2nd, 2026. My name is Steve Kaczynski. Today is May Day, the day of struggle of the working class against capitalism, the war of the peoples against imperialism, fascism and Zionism. From London, Paris to Greece and indeed all over the world, International Workers' Struggle Day was celebrated. Along with the celebration, there is a resistance in Turkey, Palestine, Yemen, Iran, the Philippines, indeed everywhere. May it always be so. Long live May Day. Yaşasın bir Mayıs, Biji Yek Gulan. Imperialism is in crisis. Here is an example. The so-called special relationship between the United States and Great Britain. Since the Second World War, the relationship has essentially involved the USA dominating Britain, and Britain following the US lead like a puppet. Some of the worst US imperialist adventures like Iraq and Afghanistan have been actively supported by Britain, who contributed to the invasion troops. However, the British government has been reluctant to back the Americans and the Israelis to the full in their aggression against Iran. This is not an anti-imperialist stance, but a cautious one. The USA and Israel are going places that Britain does not want to go, and the world's capitalist economy is at risk. Support in the form of allowing the Americans to use bases does continue, however, but Britain's reluctance to get further involved is in fact typical in not offering upfront support to US and Israeli military operations, with the pathetic exception of the collaborator government of Lithuania. The USA is not pleased. Harsh words have been exchanged between Trump and British Prime Minister Starmer. So British Head of State King Charles has gone to America on a visit, and it is clear that he is trying to improve the relations between two imperialist countries. In Iran, it has been noted that the American authorities have fallen strangely silent about the Minab massacre, in which schoolgirls in southeastern Iran were slaughtered during the direct US and Israeli aggression. Trump claimed on March 7th that he thought Iran was responsible for the massacre without specifying how. Later, he claimed that Tomahawk missiles were used. However, Iran does not possess Tomahawk missiles. They are an American weapon. The American silence about Minab may be the silence of embarrassment, though it is hardly the first time that imperialism and Zionism have mown down schoolchildren. The anti-imperialist front condemned the arbitrary killing of fighters and civilians by the collaborationist government of the Philippines. 19 people have lost their lives as a result of attacks by the collaborationist army of the Philippines, attacks carried out on the New People's Army. The clash happened on April 19th near the town of Toboso. The anti-imperialist front has expressed its condolences, noting that wherever there is resistance to imperialism and fascism, there will be martyrs. There was unrest in the southern English town of Epsom after online reports that a woman had been gang-raped and asylum seekers or immigrants were involved. Later, after protesters were arrested, police issued a statement noting that not only were no asylum seekers involved, but the gang rape had not occurred. However, it had gained a life of its own on social media. It is truly said that a lie is halfway around the world before the truth has its boots on. Not so different from the situation in Turkey's Maraş area in December 1978, when a rumour spread that the Alevi religious minority and the communists were burning mosques. Nothing of the sort happened, but the incitement resulted in over 100 people being murdered by mobs. Kim Jong-un has praised North Korean soldiers who self-sacrificed by detonating their grenades while fighting to drive the Ukrainian army out of Kursk region. Kim said those who unhesitatingly opted for sacrificial action to defend the great honor were heroes. Their self-sacrifice expecting no compensation and the devotion expecting no reward. This is the definition of the height of loyalty of our army, Kim said in Pyongyang on Monday as he unveiled a memorial for fallen troops. State media KCNA reported. Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov and the Speaker of Russia's Parliament, Vyacheslav Volodin, were among those who attended the event. Those who fell in the vanguard of charges and those who writhed in frustration at the failure to fulfill their duties as soldiers who were given orders, rather than in pain in their bodies torn by bullets and shells, they too can be called the party's faithful warriors and patriots, Kim said. Besides sending soldiers, North Korea also promised to send thousands of workers to help rebuild Kursk. Communist Maria José Baños who has been imprisoned in Spain for many years, has been released thanks to solidarity and struggle. A statement from the anti-repression platform, which campaigned for the release of the Il Maria, said that this victory was made possible thanks to her determination and resistance, which in recent years became the cornerstone of an unprecedented solidarity campaign in the country. Maria José Baños Andújar has been released from prison. This was not an unconditional concession. It was the result of sustained pressure in the streets and the tireless work of many people in solidarity who never gave up the fight to bring her out. As the Barcelona anti-repression platform and the Ponent anti-repression platform, we want to acknowledge every act of solidarity, every mobilization, and every show of support that made this moment possible. Solidarity is the best weapon of the people. Resistance is victory. Welcome, Maria José. We are concluding this week's news with two remarkable anniversaries from history. On 30th April 1945, during the Battle of Berlin, soldiers of the Soviet Red Army captured the Reichstag. This was not only a military victory, but also signified the definitive defeat of fascism. The red flags raised over the Reichstag symbolized the collapse of fascist rule and the end of the Third Reich. Adolf Hitler took his own life to avoid being captured by Soviet forces. During the Battle of Berlin, as the Soviet army advanced relentlessly, Hitler, his wife Eva Braun, and Joseph Goebbels retreated to their bunker. Braun and Goebbels also died by suicide, and Goebbels and his wife killed their children. Hitler's designated successor, Karl Dönitz, surrendered on 8th May. The Third Reich formally came to an end on 23rd May, when Soviet forces detained the remaining members of the Nazi government. Exactly 30 years later, on 30th April 1975, Communist forces of the National Liberation Front of South Vietnam, including the Viet Cong guerrillas and the armed forces of the North Vietnamese, captured the city of Saigon, ending the control of the United States and its South Vietnamese ally, the government of Nguyen Van Thieu. This marked the end of a 30-year struggle, 1945 to 1975, against French colonial rule and American involvement in Vietnam. This is Chosen TV, signing off until next week.